Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another one of devCodeCamp's Alumni Spotlights. I'm absolutely stoked that you're here. I'm Carl Peterson, devCodeCamp social media producer. I'm here with Michael Herman. How's it going, Michael?
It's going good. I'm stoked to be here as well. Thanks for
Yeah,
inviting me on. I'm excited to talk about my experience at devCodeCamp.
yeah, I am absolutely so excited for this one. I was wondering right off the bat, when did you attend devCodeCamp?
Let's see, it hasn't even been a year yet, which is crazy to think because so much has changed in the past year for me. But I started late August of 2021 and I graduated in November of 2021.
Awesome. And what do you do for work right now?
I am a software development engineer at Amazon.
So, Michael, going into your first developer role, with something as big as Amazon, were you excited? Was it a little intimidating? Can you kind of walk me through those feelings?
Definitely both. I would say certainly for sure I was excited. I mean, this was my first developer role. Graduating from devCodeCamp, being my first job in software development, and to be able to be at a big tech company like Amazon, I mean, that's an amazing opportunity. And to be able to work alongside and learn from some of the most brilliant software engineers in the industry, I mean, that opportunity is great. But on the same token, it's kind of intimidating, right? Because you're working alongside people that have just a long list of accomplishments. They tend to come from traditional backgrounds, meaning they have like a master's in computer science or various projects that they've worked on in the past, like meaningful things. So if you look at it from that light, it like imposter syndrome can set in. It's a real thing, right? You start to wonder like, do I measure up to my teammates? But you just have to tell yourself that you're where you belong. Like you were selected to be there, based off your ability to do the job. And another thing is that nobody's going to look at your background and compare. Like they're only viewing you as a teammate, and are you able to contribute to the team? That's all people care about. So yeah, so both things. Like very excited. It can be intimidating, but you can't let that get in the way.
Sure. Yeah, I was imagining that it would be both for exactly the reasons you said. Also, yeah, the thing you said about nobody's going to be looking at your background. Doesn't matter what you did 5 years ago. We got a job to do right now.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's really incredible that you get that learning experience every day, but also get to kind of be in that realm of technology among some of the greatest minds of our generation. So couldn't be more happy for you. So what does a typical day for you look like for your actual job duties?
Yeah, so I usually start, just going through emails, anything that applies to me specifically or the project that I'm on or my team, and kind of prioritizing those. And then shortly after that, we do our daily stand up with the team. And during that meeting, we go over what we worked on yesterday, what we plan on working on today, and any blockages that would impede you from completing the task that you have today. And then after we break from that, it's typically writing production code on whatever project you're on. We do them in sprints. So you have to make sure that the task you're doing is associated with the sprint that you're on. And that's typically the rest of the day. Doing code reviews, participating in those is a lot of what we do as well. And then there's meetings here and there, kind of sprinkled in between. So that's a typical day for me right now.
Right on. What'd you do work-wise before Dev Code Camp?
So before devCodeCamp, I did have a job in tech. I was working as a junior network administrator for about 2 years, at a smaller company, definitely a lot smaller scale than Amazon. Um, but I just kind of decided that I didn't like it. I didn't find it enjoyable, I guess. And to be honest, it was kind of boring to me. I felt like it really wasn't challenging me that much, so it's kind of sparked me to do a change, and that's how I ultimately landed at devCodeCamp.
That's awesome. What a complete difference. Yeah. I'm a little bored. Let me go join one of the fastest growing companies ever. But that's great. No, it sounds like a developer role was perfect for you then, because every day is probably a little different than the last. That's usually a reoccurring theme that I talk about on here. And I mean, that's a big reason why people get into code too. It's not that monotonous task isn't always there. So that's great. You're able to
Definitely.
flex those muscles. Uh, so what was the original spark that led you into code outside of, you know, obviously knowing you weren't extremely happy, like you just talked
Yeah.
about. What was the thing that landed on code? Because you could have gone anywhere at that point, right? I mean, any road really.
Yeah, so the spark would be just being unhappy with what I was doing as a network administrator. I mean, to be happy, you have to make sure that it's for you, right? And it was pretty clear that that wasn't for me. So during my spare time, I was kind of teaching myself how to code. I had a few friends that had gone through coding boot camps previously, and they were trying to get me into it. They were telling me, sharing their success stories with it. So I thought I'd give it a try and kind of self-teach myself a little bit before, and I was able to see that this is something that I do enjoy, and that I would love to be able to do this and get paid to do this as a living, and that's what brought me into really looking into joining a coding boot camp. And just it really it happened so fast, like on a whim. I quit my job, and I think within like a week I was enrolled at devCodeCamp. Like the decision was that fast, and honestly, it turned out to be the best decision I've made in my life so far.
That's that's good. I mean, you kind of went all in. It sounds like, and I'm glad that you.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that played out well, obviously, but also it's we only do a part of it, right? I mean, it's a big part of the student themselves. So a lot of drive and ambition, a lot of drive and ambition, rather got you to where you are now. So again, we're super excited and stoked for you. But uh, I would
Thank you.
imagine, yeah, absolutely. I would imagine though that a week after quitting and being like, yeah, let's do this. I'm imagining that you're still on a ride that hasn't slowed down since
Yeah,
then.
yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy decision. I mean, if you think about it, there was kind of a lot at risk, right? As far as financial stability and wondering if this is going to work out. But taking that leap, I mean, obviously, looking back at it right now, it's proven to be one of the best decisions I've made. But the biggest thing is being happy with what I'm doing, right? Having that fulfillment of being in a role that I actually love doing. And because there's so many different things to, instead of just having a job title and salary, that comes into your happiness, right? And if you love doing what you're doing, like, you're gonna check all the boxes.
Absolutely. Yeah, being happy is a rarity. So that's huge. So you mentioned that you attended DevCode Camp and then you graduated in November, which leads us up to when I actually started DevCode Camp of last year, and I was in the very first demo day, well, my very first demo day that you presented in. So this is the second time meeting. We didn't really talk that first time, but I know we interacted a little afterwards. For those that don't know, can you touch briefly on what that capstone project was that you did?
Yeah, so my capstone project, I developed a web application for a local gym here. A friend of mine actually runs a gym, and he didn't have like a website or an application for it. So I decided to create one as part of my capstone project.
Can you recall what the biggest challenge was going into that? Obviously, it's a 10-day sprint. It's kind of high stakes in a lot of ways, but it's also kind of a direct result of everything you've learned. So it's exciting, but also kind of scary, I would imagine. Could you kind of recall those moments?
It is. It's definitely exciting. And one of the hardest things was deciding on what to do, because there's so many ideas that are popping into your mind. That's one of the great things about being a developer, right? You start learning all these tools and you're like, oh, I could create this with this, or I could do that. There's so many different ways that you can go. And that's the beauty of developing. But when I decided on it, I think kind of the scary moment was like, okay, I have all these ideas in my mind about what I want to do. Like, where do I get started? It's like writer's block, right? But instead it's called coding block. Until you start initially writing something out and gaining that momentum, you're kind of in a block phase of like, okay, how am I going to do this? And another thing was, we were coming off of doing a lot of team projects prior to the capstone, And now the capstone is you're on your own, right? And you're applying everything that you've learned throughout the course of devCodeCamp. And you're kind of questioning, okay, am I going to be able to do this, right? And then, but it's the beauty of it is it all comes together, right? It starts to come together, and you start to see, well, I can actually do this, right? I can create a concept from a wireframe and build it into a working product that you see in our presentation of the capstone.
Super exciting. To piggyback a little off of that though, what do you think the biggest challenge overall in the boot camp was? And I understand there's probably plenty, fast moving, tons of learning, but what would you say the biggest challenge for you specifically was?
I would say for me, it was kind of blocking out negative thoughts. It's easy to start to question, am I actually smart enough to do this? Because sometimes it takes you a while to grasp a concept, right? And if you start comparing it to maybe your cohort, right, your peers, and you see that some people are grasping things faster than you, it's easy to kind of develop these negative thoughts. So that was challenging, but you have to tell yourself to keep a growth mindset. I mean, don't worry about how fast you're grasping things. Just try to learn something new. Um, it can be a little thing, but as long as you learn something new each day, keep that growth mindset, you're going to be just fine. And that was something that I had to continuously tell myself, and it worked out. I tell you, by the time I got to the capstone, like everything was clicking for me, and it started all coming together. So you just got to keep telling yourself to keep going.
That's excellent advice. Do you remember the first time outside of the capstone, or maybe it was the capstone, but do you remember the first time from day one till graduation when that kind of moment was just kind of, oh, I got this. And it could have been the capstone.
I think the majority of that kind of did happen during the capstone. A lot of it happens throughout the course of devCodeCamp, right? That's one of my favorite things about coding is those aha moments when you're stuck on a problem for so long or a concept is just not making sense, and then it finally clicks for you and you're like, oh, I get it. Like a lot of that happens throughout the course of devcode, but the majority of it happened to me during the capstone, I would say. Realizing how everything connects together and being able to build that product and see it come to life. And it's all from you. It's like you created from an idea in your head from scratch, and there it is in front of you with all the tools that you've learned throughout devCodeCamp. So, I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, capstone's a huge confirming moment, so makes total sense. So, Michael, you were in the Air Force. First off, thank you very much for everything that you did
thank you.
there. Second, absolutely. Secondly, we see a lot inside the virtual devCodeCamp doors. We see a lot of veterans come in and out of the program, mostly, a lot of times transitioning into civilian life. And usually these veterans are super quick to catch on, and usually they also are very successful developers long term. Um, do you think that while you were serving, do you think that during the boot camp, it kind of gave you a little bit of a head start on having that structure and kind of mentality of not only the fast moving, but just overall, just kind of having a pre-start into it all. Do you think that the Air Force trains you anyway to help you in that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely skills that transition well, crossing into joining a coding boot camp, and also just as being a software engineer in general. And one of the biggest things is attention to detail. I mean, they harp on that in the military because it could be the difference between life and death, literally. Not as dramatic in software engineering, but attention to detail could save you hours, right, of debugging. And I'm sure like every student at devCodeCamp can tell you about the time that they stared at a problem for 30 minutes because they missed a comma or a semicolon. Little things like that definitely helps. And another thing is in the military, they really teach you how to adapt, persevere, and overcome to any situation. So if you have a problem, like you kind of approach it with a certain tenacity, right? Like almost like you have to solve that problem. You have no other choice. So what am I going to do to solve it? And that kind of mindset, I think it proved to be greatly helpful in devCodeCamp, just tackling any problem that comes up with that kind of tenacity.
Michael, what would you say your favorite part of being a developer is overall?
See, overall, I think I kind of touched on it. It's those aha moments when something clicks, and you kind of get this rush, right? Of kind of this dopamine rush, like, oh, I understand it now. And you kind of feel like a genius, right? It
It's kind
sounds
of like
corny,
solving a
but
puzzle, right? Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Like when you
same thing.
solve a puzzle and like that rush that you get, well, I figured it out. And the great thing about being a developer is that's never going to end, right? There's always there's always something to learn. There's always going to be new technologies coming out. So there's always going to be, those little moments where you have to learn something and then it clicks and you kind of get that rush. So I would say that's probably my favorite thing about being a developer.
That's great. Yeah, there's always something that's going to be broken
Yeah,
that needs to
yeah,
be
for sure.
needs to be
Exactly.
fixed. Michael, do you think that devCodeCamp sets you up for long-term success?
I would definitely say devCodeCamp laid the foundation of knowledge that I have. The knowledge that you need, kind of the minimum knowledge that you need to start a career as a developer. And you kind of have to have that foundation to build upon. Well, like I said, it's a never-ending process. You're going to always be continually building on it. But devCodeCamp definitely laid that foundation for me to be able to land this opportunity that I have now and to continue to grow on what I learned at devCodeCamp. So 100% for sure.
That's great. Michael, we're actually at the end of this interview already. Thank you so much we got one more question, but thank you so much for your time. And I can't say it enough. We're so excited for you and happy to see your success. But most of it's you and the developer that you are and the person that you are. So it's really exciting from the sidelines to watch you now thrive and do what you do. Which leads us to this last question. So if somebody was watching this or listening to this or reading this, however they're consuming it right here, right now, very interested in joining devCodeCamp, what do you think you would say to them?
I'm going to answer it as if I was talking to myself when I joined, not even a year ago. Do it, right? Take the leap. For me, it turned out to be the best decision that I've made. If you're considering doing it, I would recommend maybe kind of jumping into it, dabble into it a little bit before you make the commitment of joining a boot camp. Kind of see if it's for you, right? Um, I would say that, but if you are considering it, I think the rewards far outweigh the risk. For me, if you look at my story, not even a year ago uh, to where I am now working in big tech, right? Because I made the decision to join devCodeCamp and kind of learn how to be a developer. 100% it's worth it. So I would just say, take the leap and do it.
Michael Herman, everybody, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time again. And everybody, thank you so much for watching, listening. I just said it all. It keeps getting longer and longer, the list of watching, listening, reading. I don't know how many more things we can add to this, but regardless of how you're consuming, thank you so much for taking some time out. And Michael, thank you again. And once again, my name is Carl Peterson, and we will catch you in the next one. Thank you, everybody. See you later, Michael.
Yeah.